All right, damn. It's that time again for another open court discussion in the Counselor's Corner. I am your host, David Lorenzo Glover, aka the Controversial Counselor. Joining me is my co host, Herb Lewis, the Big Bad Wolf. Our last,
Ooh.
our last open court discussion, we covered the subject matter involuntary celibacy, men, women, and orgasms. Well, tonight, July 12th, we will be discussing cancel culture. Where do you stand? Cancel culture or call out culture is a modern form of ostracism in which someone is thrust out of social or their professional circle, whether it be online, on social media, or in person. The expression cancel culture has mostly negative connotations and is commonly used in debates on free speech and censorship. Very interesting. And just another form of masses of people trying to control the narrative and having creative free spirit individuals fall in line. Please like and share our video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Controversial Counselor. So yeah. Cancel culture is I don't know, man. I got some questions to ask her, but this whole thing to me is just is getting out of hand, and I don't really understand it, and especially the simple fact where I look at as grown individuals, we have our own issues to worry about. To put so much energy of trying to destroy someone because something they said. Now, certain things people probably should be canceled for, and we'll get into that uh, later. But some of the, and I'll give you a prime example um, where I guess the other day, Coach Jeff Van Gundy, well, he's a commentator now, made a comment about Devin Booker, and he said he looks like a choir boy, but I guess he balls like a hoodlum. So they're already, people like, oh, he need to be fired. That's racist. I don't know. Maybe I'm just cut different. I don't. That doesn't bother me because I think deeper, and I think he might have just said the wrong thing. I mean, I think if he used something like he balls like he's shit from the streets or from Rutgers Park or somewhere like that, I know what he meant by that. Like he looks nice, whatever, pretty much, but he's an assassin on the court. It they've been going at it, and I don't know if I'm sure he commentated last night, but I guess a lot of people are they're calling for his job and stuff like that, saying that was a racist statement. So nowadays it's just like, what can you say? Or you got to walk on eggshells on everything you say. So nothing is authentic or genuine. It's like we live in a fake ass society. So that's my introduction to all of that.
It's sad because I remember, and for the record, cancel culture is not new. I want to make sure that people understand that cancel culture is actually an old concept, but the difference is the tolerance has become less. And what I mean by that is this: the internet wasn't around when we were 17, 18, 19, 20. So the only people you really could offend were the people who were in your general area, unless you were a big name and you happen to get some traction in a news publication like the USA Today. I think the USA Today, I'm not sure when they started printing, but the USA Today, I believe, was one of the few newspapers that was actually circulated throughout the country. You have some like the LA Times, I think the Chicago uh, Sun or Journal or whatever it is. You had those major newspapers that they were circulated throughout the country and they had loyal readership. But for the most part, um, the reach most people had wasn't there. So if you had a small town, a law enforcement officer or a captain or I'm sorry, a deputy chief of police or a chief of police that said something, it usually remained there. And depending on the demographic and the age of the people, it might not even make a splash in the pond, even if it's a big boulder you drop, because it there was just more tolerance back then. I mean, think of all the TV shows that we grew up with: Archie Bunker, The Jeffersons, Dukes of Hazzard, Good Times, Different Strokes, Facts of Life. Do we honestly think that any of those television shows would be able to be aired today?
Hell no.
Too much
Absolutely
outrage.
not.
Yeah, to just fire too much outrage. So we have to ask ourselves, what has happened to America as a country between the 1900s, pardon me, the 1990s and roughly now? Like I said, the cancel culture wasn't new. You know, the no snitching, that was cancel culture. You were ostracized. If people found out you talked to the police and you got somebody in trouble, yo, we can't talk to him. We can't talk to her. They snitch.
Yeah, that's too far.
You know, we don't want to be around you. The show police that while I was doing research, I saw a couple articles, and I just want to go down a list of things that have been targeted last year as part of cancel culture. Law enforcement. Now, just think of how your cities run now with police, given all the things that have occurred. Just imagine if you didn't have any law enforcement responding to anything. You think it's lawlessness now? Just imagine with no police. Churches were being targeted for just the the speech and the support that they give various organizations. Theme parks, Splash Mountain. I guess Splash Mountain shares his name from a 1946 movie that has some racist undertones called Song of the South. Now, I've never been to Walt Disney World or Walt Disneyland, so I don't know anything about the rides. But sometimes I just think that we we're just overrun with emotions, and we just lack critical thinking, and just the whole tolerance is just gone. So the movie Gone with the Wind, I believe Netflix pulled it from streaming. Now I picked up the movie, I think, earlier this year. I had never seen it. I'd heard about it, never seen it. Personally, I like the movie. But just imagine 20 years from now, Show Jeopardy's still around. And the question comes up about Academy Awards, Black Academy Award winners. And the $1,000 question. Somebody asks, who's the first black to win an Oscar? Some people may know that answer now, some people may not. But just imagine if the movie Gone with the Wind is taken off of shelves, out of books, just essentially just dropped from the history, like like the Fab Five's banners were pulled down in Michigan. People would not be able to get that question right because they just simply wouldn't have the knowledge. For those who don't know, it's Hattie Mae. This is what I'm talking about. When we start falling victim to uh, boisterous minorities, because essentially that's what this is. There's a lot of people that don't subscribe to it, just like critical race theory. And I won't get into that. I just mentioned that because they kind of are strange bedfellows, if you will. You have one that's arguing that this should be taught, and then you have one that's arguing that it shouldn't be taught. This is pretty much along the same lines. People want to get rid of things that offends them, as opposed to just saying, okay, you know what? I don't like it, so I'm going to go the opposite way. Nobody forces anyone to do anything or to listen to anything that they deem offensive, that they find offensive, or that they feel impugns them in some way. That's the one thing about this country that you do have is freedom of choice. You have freedom of choice on where you go. Most people have freedom of choice on where they live, where they work, who they associate with. And we choose to waste that time on things that offend us. Why? I'm not a person that believes in protesting. I think for me personally speaking, I don't do it. But if somebody wants to, I'm like, hey, go ahead and knock yourself out. I'd rather organize, get a group of people organized, and let's say, hey, look, we don't like something, let's support this by voting and let's contribute via political action committee or funds of some nature. You got some people that don't do that. You got some people that wholeheartedly don't believe in voting, and to each his own. My stance when it comes to voting is, hey, I don't care who you vote for. I would encourage you to vote. Just get involved, because that if you really want to change something, that's the way you're going to be able to do it. So let me get back to a couple of the other things that were slated for cancel culture. The Cracker Barrel, which is a restaurant usually located in the southern United States, I do believe. Drew Brees had made last year for football fans. Drew Brees had made a comment about something, and they were talking about cutting him, getting him out of the league. And I'm just thinking, wow, are people not allowed to have a preference on something? Just imagine and I can't remember their names offhand, the two brothers that stood up at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico. You do that now, you may not be an Olympian for long, because people are looking to boycott. That's another thing that's in the tool of cancel culture is boycotting. They say, well, if we can't get to you, we're going to get to your sponsors. And the sponsors don't want to lose money. That's revenue. So they're going to say, hey, look, I'm sorry, man, we got to drop you. Another individual, and this goes back to about the mid 1980s, named Jimmy the Greek, handicapper. He was in studio and I can't even speak tonight. In studio analysis for CBS, and he was making a comment which is factually accurate, and he was saying that slave owners took their hardiest woman and their hardiest man, and they mated them so they could get that bigger, stronger slave. He said that's one of the ways why blacks are physically superior in this country. And within 2 or 3 weeks, he was fired.
But I also think with that too, didn't he call the the Smurfs, whatever at the time, Alvin Garrett, Art Monk? He made some reference to them as being monkeys or something.
I don't know, but you know what the funny thing about that is, Howard Cosell was never punished for a statement when he said, "Look at that monkey go," when one of the players was running up the sideline.
Hey, it's interesting. I want to bring Willie in, whatever. So Willie, cancel culture. What's your take on that phrase or that theory or whatever you want to call it?
You know, it's funny. I had to actually go and look it up because I had no clue what it was. Seeing it and hearing it and seeing all the stuff that was going on, I did not realize that was the term used for it. So when I asked you what was the topic tonight, and you said cancel culture, I'm like, okay, what the hell is that? So I had to go online and research and read about it. And like Herb said, you know, I find that there's so many things people want to cancel. If they don't agree with it or they don't like it, they want to cancel it. They want to boycott it. They want to, like even what we're talking about with the Olympics. They want to boycott the Olympics because of Sha'Carri's drug test, you know. And the thing is, the people who want to boycott and making all this stink about it normally the people have no clue what they're boycotting or what they're trying to eliminate. You know, Uncle Ben's rice, Aunt Jemima, they don't know the history behind it. So they go out and all they know is a black woman on it, and she started out as a woman with a head rag on her head when they first made the syrup. So all they know is that the previous pictures, showed it as a woman, older woman, slave, or whatever she might have been back in that time, and they wanted her removed. Uncle Ben, he's an Uncle Tom, so we need to remove him. But then the thing is, Uncle Tom was actually supposed to be a good character in the book. But again, because people don't know history and don't research and read about anything, they're quick to boycott stuff because they don't understand it. And they're talking about boycotting the Olympics because she took a drug that she knew was illegal or a violation if you take it within a month of any international activity. It's not that it's banned that you can't do it. It's that you can't do it within a month of the activity because it has to be at a certain level in your system, which people don't realize and don't know because they don't follow the Olympics. They don't follow track and field. They don't follow the sports, period. So all they heard was, she's being suspended for smoking marijuana. Well, it's legal in the U.S. It's legal where she smoked it. But it's not. The Olympics is an international activity, and they all have rules, and they all know the rules. And so it just makes me look at how once reading and learn about what cancel culture was, it started to make me look back at a lot of the activities that people want to cancel, and especially Black people. We cancel things that really end up hurting us because, like Herb said, you eliminate these things, and now as our children get older, they don't see our history because we've already had it removed because it was a reminder of slavery. It was a reminder of a bad time. But those reminders of bad times is what helped us to become stronger in the future because now we know how to avoid and know how to fight and how to battle certain things based on what happened in our past. And when you don't know your past, it's how do you develop a future? How do you avoid making the same mistakes in the future? We don't. And a lot of people don't read. I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier today. I had met some people on, what day was that? Saturday. Met some people on Saturday, and I was talking to them, and I found out they do the same thing that I do. And I offered to give them free copies of my workbooks to go back and work with the young men that they work with in their community in a different city. And you would have thought I offered them a pipe bomb. Because for 3 days, I've been trying to get these books to them, and they avoided me like I was trying to give them something that was going to hurt them. But if I would have been, giving them some clothes or, something that I don't know what, but because I was offering them books, something where, you got to open up and read, and we don't read books. We don't read books. We don't learn our history. We don't want to know our history. We look at our history as being what the man say our history is. When you hear about Black history, where they start you at? Slavery. They start you at slavery, and they go through this whole slavery. So by the time you get through Black History Month, you're so tired of hearing about slavery. But in my books and what I talk about, I show young people we started out as kings. We were kings in Africa. We didn't start out as slaves in America. We started out as kings in Africa and became presidents in our countries, in Africa and the United States. So the name of my latest book was This Week in Black History, the 4th edition, From Kings to Presidents. And it had pictures of all the kings, different kings from Africa. And in the center, it had Nelson Mandela, and it has Barack Obama. So again, showing young people the true understanding of where we came from was not from slave. We didn't come from slavery. We didn't come from slaves. We came from being kings in Africa. We created and invented so many things in this country that we don't know about. But as we do this culture, what do you call it again? I forgot the name. Cancel culture.
Cancel culture.
We start to eliminate all the things that show our young people and give them pride in what we've done. The street lights. Half the young people, half the Black people don't know a Black man invented the street light, the gas mask, the mop, locks, shoes, all these things, cotton gin, You know, all these kind of things that blacks have invented and created. The super soaker water gun,
Yeah.
you know, discovered the ways for the mic for the cell phone. You know, you have all these different things that we've invented and created, and we don't know because we don't read. We want to cancel everything out that reminds us of slavery without understanding that those things are what built us to be the survivors that we are today. I mean, think about it. We survived through slavery, through beatings, being transported over on ships for, you know, 3, 4, 5 months piled on top of each other and survived those things. Our ancestors survived those things, and now we want to eliminate it. We want to, you know, just erase it. And it makes no sense to me. I've never understood that. So when you said the cancel culture, I'm like, what is cancel culture? But it's eliminating our history is what we're really doing. We're eliminating what made us the people that we are today.
So one of the things, and I know we talked about it, but and I'm gonna admit, like you said, Willie, when Herb sent it to me, like cancel culture. I mean, I understand the concept, but I didn't know they had a phrase for it. So I had to look up to it. I'm like, cancel culture. And, you know, Herb, a lot of times he sent me stuff and I have question marks. Like, what the hell are you talking about? So I looked into it and I was like, okay. Then you see examples and you just, when you don't partake in that stuff, you like, I don't even know what the hell this is because
Exactly.
I don't get caught up in stuff like that. Because I always say when you're occupied with your stuff and trying to do things, you don't take the time to, even if I had money like that, I just don't see me participating in that and finding time to say, oh, I want to eliminate this, or I want to drag this person down because they said that. I'm just not into that. But for some people maybe joining. So what is the difference between cancel culture, because I heard both of you mention that, and boycotting? So what would be the difference?
And now that's a very good question. And the difference is this: usually when you boycott something, the measure is to hurt the mechanism that is supporting something that goes contrary to what you believe in. In other words, let's say an organization is responsible for a violation of they're selling underage alcohol. They're selling alcohol to underage people, but the law doesn't punish them. Only slaps them on the head, hits them with a fine, as opposed to revoking their liquor license. So you say, okay, you know what? We're going to get together and we're going to picket and we're going to try and get people to boycott this establishment because what they're doing is illegal and it's causing harm to people. Cancel culture doesn't care about facts. And there's a comment that I actually want to, that I want to, it said, let me find that. It says cancel culture is a culmination of feelings being valued over facts. And that's a very profound and apropos statement. And that's exactly what it is. You have people that value things that they can't prove, but because they feel a certain way, they say, well, you know what? We don't care if it's not right. We want it anyway. It's just like a kid who behaves in a petulant manner in the store, and they fall out and they whine and cry until they get what they want. And with the advent of social media now, their reach is further. And in order to placate them in some way, shape, or form, they give in. So you're talking about, as opposed to targeting a business that's doing something outside the law, you're targeting someone because you just simply don't like what it is that they stand for. Case in point, what Howard is doing with Felicia Rashad, or what people want Howard to do with Felicia Rashad. They want to have her removed as the chair of fine arts.
Right.
All because she supported Bill Cosby. What happened to Bill Cosby was illegal and wrong anyway. He should have never been convicted, taken to trial, but to try and use what he gave as a testimony which was agreed upon. His Fifth Amendment rights had been violated, but they gave him the essentially diplomatic immunity and said this will never be used against you in trial. And they turn around and they go against that. There is nobody in this country who understands the basic laws, especially the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, that would agree that that was legal. We're not saying that Bill Cosby was innocent. Mm-hmm. Just the way they went about it was illegal. That's the equivalent to police kicking down your front door, coming in there. You got, if this applies to your individual state, you got 3 pounds of cocaine sitting on your table. I'm sorry, I said cocaine. 3 pounds of marijuana sitting on your table, and they say we take you to jail. Well, you don't have a search warrant, or we're taking you to jail anyway. There's nobody in this country who would stand for that. But it was okay with Bill Cosby, and now y'all want to cancel Felicia because she supports him and the pound cake talk or the pound cake message. I think sometimes I have to ask myself, are we as a nation tolerant, or are we going to fall to mob rule? You know, our what do we really want to be? Do we want to be a nation of laws, governed by them, ran by them, or do we want to be a nation that's ran by feelings and governed by feelings? I don't know. Sometimes I have to sit back and I have to ask myself. This is why I've gotten away from pop culture, and you know, as I said on the show before, I don't even have TV in my house. The information I get, usually I'll see something in my YouTube feed. I'm sorry, in my Facebook feed. Or I'm catching podcasts on YouTube and they mention something, I'll go check it out. That's where I get most of my information from. Mainstream media, they're too biased, you know, and they'll jump on the first thing without vetting the story, and they'll put it out there. And it's like everybody's trying to get eyeballs, regardless if the story is factual or not. So I have to ask, you know, what are we trying to do as a country? You know, where do we want this country to go?
It plays on people's emotions. That's what they do with the media and the social media. What's going to get the people riled up? That's basically the stories that you see are the stories where they're trying to play on people's emotions. And based on the people's response, once they play those stories, is the direction that they go with it. I mean, think about even this. I go back to this whole Sha'Carri thing. When it first came out, at first everybody was like, oh, okay, she smoked marijuana, she got suspended. Then all of a sudden, somebody said, well, no, it's illegal in the US, so it should be okay. They should let her run anyways. And then all of a sudden you had a bunch of other people jump on. So what they do is they put these stories out and they wait to see which way society goes with, who's going to get emotional about it. And then that's what they play. They play on emotions now. Most of the media that you see nowadays, it's not based on stories and giving you facts and information. They put a story out there and then they wait to see how people respond to those stories, and then that's the stories that they build on. Those are the stories that they play to.
Yeah.
Those are the stories that you hear for the next 3, 4, 5 months, you know, back and forth in the news, because those are the ones that are going to carry that station and carry the media for the next couple of months. So they play on people's emotions. And who are the people that normally get the emotions? The emotional people are women. They play the stories that are going to rouse women, you know, children being killed, children being hurt, a woman being wronged for the Olympics, you know, a man being killed, and they show the mother and the crying on the news about, you know, those, and they play those stories. And then what they do is they build them up and promote them and get the emotions going. And then if it's a police involved situation, then what do the police do? They play to who they play to. All right, so now they go and they find all the stories about, well, he jaywalked when he was 12 years old. Oh, he's a bad guy. So now they play that up to get, you know, to get their group support and the emotions going behind them, you know, and they find the craziest stories and they build them up and they try everybody's playing on people's emotions. And so that's why, I like you, I don't really watch the news. I don't watch television too much. I watch like certain shows that I kind of watch on streaming. But for the most part, it's you'd go crazy because your emotions are going to change every day. Your attitude is going to change every day because as you can see these stories, if you follow them, they basically change every other day. There's always some new angle that they come at it with the story. And they keep playing it until it burns out, and then they come up with something else. Yeah. So I mean, we're in a society where everything is emotional, and I bring this back to when I work in my program, working with boys. Our boys are being raised primarily by women. So how are our boys being raised? Boys are being raised emotionally. So a lot of the things that they do it they react based on emotions and not on rational thought. You know, men are thinkers. Men think about, you know, the things that we do. We build and we do things based on our thought, on how we respond to things. Normally it's based on our thought pattern. Women respond things emotionally. So that's why women cry. That's why they, you know, their emotions play a lot into the actions that they do. So when we raise our boys with women without a male figure around, because when boys were growing up and we had a male figure in the house, if we started crying, what did they say? Stop that crying. Boys don't cry. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you don't hear that anymore. Or a boy crying, you know, the mother sitting there picking them up and hugging them and giving them that attention, that comfort, you know, to calm them down. But not telling him not to cry, she's just calming them down. And so what we have is that our boys are raised being emotional. We have women that are emotional. So men who are men in society, it's hard for us to speak up and say anything because we're being attacked if we show any rationale and no emotion. Oh, you heartless, you don't care. You must have been hurt. That's why you respond in that way. You know, you're heartless, all these kind of things, because you're coming at it from a rational standpoint. And we're losing our men, we're losing our young boys because they're getting too emotional.
Yeah.
They're reacting to things, you know, instead of thinking about their actions. That's why I teach kids chess. And I talk about chess in my programs. Teaching kids how to play chess, because what does chess do? It makes you think about your actions. When you move that piece, you have to also think about, if I make this move or I make this action, what can be the reaction from my opponent? That's why I teach kids chess. That's how I teach them how to play chess, because it makes them think about the actions and the things they do in life. And I show them how that affects them in life. Being raised, you know, with a bunch of emotions, you can't be emotional and play chess. You know what I mean?
At all.
You can't, somebody take your paw, you can't walk and start stamping and slap the table and knock all the pieces off, you know, you can't do all that. So, I mean, I just think if we're too emotional with our society, everything is based on emotions and played on emotions.
And a lot of that you could tell even on social media by the responses of certain things. And even some guys, like in other groups, I post stuff and, you know, I have the images, but they're fake pictures, whatever. And some guys, they come through like, oh, this is fake news, whatever, because these are pictures from Google. And I'm like, what's wrong with y'all? Like, what, like, when, not to generalize anything, but women typically pick apart something like that, the pictures and all that. But guys, I would think you would look at the content and say, and I always say, well, the picture's not real, but the situation is definitely real. But if you want me to use a real picture, I'll use yours the next time, since this is a fake picture, whatever. Then they get crickets and they disappear, whatever.
Exactly.
Like, what is going on with you? Like, who thinks so? I'm looking at the content.
I like your pictures.
Yeah.
I be wanting to borrow some of them.
Hey, Help yourself.
Who's he talking about? They said I sound like a Trump supporter. What's that got to do with?
No, I think he was just making an example. Like that's one of the things people say if you respond,
Yeah.
they come out and say,
Yeah.
you're a Trump supporter. You
Oh,
sound like
okay.
a
I'm
Trump
like,
supporter.
what? I'm like, what?
Yeah, Kevin Samuels is called. Well, he refers to it as sign language, shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. And that's speaking of Kevin Samuels, 2 years ago, and I know a lot of people this probably not going to quite understand. They had a hit list of black male YouTube content creators
Oh,
that they
yeah.
were trying to get their channels taken away from them.
Anthony Sotomayor, whatever his name is.
Tommy Sotomayor, he was
yeah.
number one. They
Oh,
were gunning for him.
They
They
couldn't
were
stand him.
gunning for Tommy. Oh, they can't stand Tommy, boy. Yo, they hate Tommy with a burning passion because Tommy, hey, people think Kevin Samuels is raw.
He was horrible.
He does not hold a candle. Tommy Sotomayor. He says stuff that makes me cringe. I'm just like, dang.
Exactly.
But Tommy Sotomayor, there's another gentleman named, let me get the old man's book, Mamiya Obsidian Ali. Author, go get the book. I haven't read it yet. But they were trying to get him. Another gentleman, I referred to him, BGS. It was about a dozen black male YouTube content creators who they were trying to get the channel snatched because they don't like what they say. Not because it's derogatory, inflammatory, inaccurate, just because they don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just plain and simple. I mean, are we really in that type of atmosphere and environment to where you have to watch what you say to people? For the fear that it might get back to somebody and ultimately cost you your job.
Yep, you do these days.
Listen.
I mean,
listen, Herb. On the small microcosm, we can look at the counselor's corner. What happened ever since you brought them guys on the show and they were saying stuff about single moms and dropping it. We used to have our women panel used to be flooded, but ever since then, they've been hurt. They don't want to admit it. They come on here and there, but they used to come. Yeah, I'm calling y'all out. Y'all watching it, so I don't care. But they felt like okay, that was the wrong thing. These guys. They wanted to even target me like, well, you didn't defend the ladies or such and such. Listen, I'm listening to these guys. They're entitled to their opinion. That doesn't mean I necessarily agree with everything because I was raised by a single mother and had predominantly single aunts and stuff that helped raise me. So I'm just listening. And some of the stuff I'm like, wow, like this is an interesting perspective that I never thought about. But yeah, things have changed. Whatever. And they're trying to cancel our culture on here on the small level. So we still pushing forward.
Yeah, it's the irony of a whole lot of things that people do is like Willie said, you start robbing history. Now, see, I was not a proponent of taking down those Confederate Civil War statues.
See, you like me.
Because those are conversation starters.
I'm the same way. I feel just
Say
like
again,
you.
Willie?
I agree with you.
Those are conversation starters.
Yeah.
So let's imagine that you're walking through with your grandson. And he says, Granddad, who is that man? You have an open open invite to explain to your child from a black male perspective what that individual represents. But if you take that away, that question never arises.
That's right. You can't tell them that history and how what that person did, what what that person represents, and the fact that even though like for example, Robert E. Lee, who fought during the Confederate War, you can't tell them about who he was, but then show how, even though he represented the South, how the North, because of the blacks who fought with the North, joined the North and fought and battled and was able to beat him and his soldiers and be able to help to make slavery abolished. You can't go into those stories and be able to share that with your kids, because now they don't see Robert E. Lee statues. They don't see, all these different things that the people are so proud of, but y'all lost. The bottom line is y'all lost. You're celebrating them, but y'all lost. And then how did we as a black people, how did we help to win that battle? How did we help abolish slavery? All the things that came about. It wasn't just Abraham Lincoln signing emancipation. If it wasn't for the blacks who they offered their freedom to, if they came and fought with the North, because they didn't have the manpower to beat the South. And by offering the slaves the opportunity to be free, if they helped them to win the battle, that's how the North was able to win, and the Union was able to take over and win the war. None of that.
Not only that,
you're not going to teach that.
Let's look at the 150,000 freed black men that actually fought in the U.S. Civil War. And there's also I heard reports and things of that nature of blacks as well fighting for the Confederacy. Now they didn't actually take up arms, but what they did was they helped in service roles. And for people that don't understand how military works, service and support roles are vitally important to how an army moves and operates. They move supplies, keep an army supplied. I mean, there's a lot of things that goes on to keep an army supplied and on the move. So the movie Glory, I think, is a fantastic movie. And if no one has ever seen it, I highly recommend you watch that movie. The funny thing when I first saw Glory was I had to sit back and realize that was Matthew Broderick playing a serious role, because I've always viewed him as Ferris Bueller's comedy. He stepped into that role and did it, as all of them did. Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, they were masterful in that movie. But if we start taking things away, all of a sudden it fractures the history. A lot of people probably don't know that Robert E. Lee's father was actually prominent in the formation of the country. But when we start taking away things, we get pockets here, pockets there. And all of a sudden now, you have to try and fill in holes because information has been taken from you. It will be the equivalent. Just imagine going through the Bible and taking books out of the Bible. Just imagine going through any text, any holy text, the Quran, or just imagine taking things out of a recipe that your mother made or your grandmother made, and now they're passing it down and something's missing. You say, hey, wait a minute, this don't taste right. Or this tastes awful. That's what we're doing when we engage in this type of behavior and rhetoric.
Cancel culture.
I thought that's what they would do with the Bible. I thought people pick and choose certain aspects of it that fit them for that particular time. But when it's time to go out, club, or turn up, that's the last thought in their mind, the Bible. But then certain times, whatever, if it's with a man and you're trying to, make your moves and trying to, have a deep relationship, well, I don't entertain premarital sex and all of that stuff. So people kind of pick and choose that works for them. It's like the Golden Corral. Like, oh, this is what I want today. This is what I want to use today for the Bible. But in this situation, I don't want to use it because it doesn't benefit me. So all that stuff. bunch of crap, man. Bunch of crap, man, going on, man.
And it begs the question. It begs the question to ask: Where will this country be in 10, 15, 20 years? Like I said, they want to talk about critical race theory, but you can't talk about critical race theory if you want to start eliminating parts of the past.
Mm-hmm.
It makes trying to teach critical race theory a non-starter. It's almost non sequitur. I mean, who are you going to teach what to? If you're going to start canceling things because they don't align with what you believe, hey, look. If you had a neighbor when we were kids, if you had a neighbor that was racist, we just simply avoided them. You didn't speak to them because you knew where they stood.
Yeah.
Why does that have to change now? Why can't we practice tolerance and acceptance, even more so than tolerance? Because if you're willing to accept somebody as is, more than likely they're going to accept you as is, at least that much. Nobody's asking people to love, unless you subscribe to the Bible, of course. Nobody's asking you to love what someone says. Nobody's asking you to love your neighbor's perspective or stance on whatever it is, whether it's alternative lifestyles, what they eat, how they behave, how they raise their children, what they do. I have a philosophy. If I can't help you, I'm not going to hurt you, and I believe that with every cell in my body. But you have some people that if they can't help you, they're trying to take you down.
Yep, trying to tear you down. Yep.
They say, you know what? If I ain't happy, they can't be happy. Yep. We all gonna be miserable. And I will tell people, avoid them people. Avoid them. They may not be toxic, but they sure as hell ain't healthy.
Crabs in the bear.
Yes, exactly. And that mindset will only keep you from getting better. If you're gonna harbor that energy, that malice, then eventually it's going to consume you. Let it go. Yeah. Get that out of there. I see stuff on Facebook all the time, and I'm just like, nah, that's not true. But you know what? If that's what that individual believes,
so
laissez-faire. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like, okay.
You keep strolling by it and keep it moving, whatever. But a lot of people have to be validated with something. Yeah. So certain groups or certain things that's going on, they want to jump on the bandwagon and don't know anything about what they're doing. But just because of the masses of people doing it, they want to do it. Yeah. And they want hits, they want likes, they want this, so they want to be a part of that, and which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it makes me fearful of the environment that we are creating for the kids coming up behind us. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of them, simply put, they don't have the ability, and they can't develop it to be able to navigate such a complex world. For us, when we were coming up, things were pretty much simple. You went outside, you played, got good grades, did what you were told. You were pretty much good. Nowadays, that's not always the case, because these kids, they're not going outside. Mm-mm. A lot of them, they don't play. That's why juvenile diabetes is skyrocketing. When we were kids, juvenile diabetes, what's that? Diabetes is something old folks. Yeah, that's an old folks disease. That's like creaky bones and bad eyesight. We ain't got to worry about all that. High blood pressure and cholesterol, I ain't got to worry about that for another 40 years. And now all of a sudden, that stuff is omnipresent in people that are 30 to 40 years old. It's just like, what has happened? So just imagine what these kids are coming into, with the hormones in the food,
Yeah.
and they're developing at a rate that is unfathomable. I mean, you seeing young girls that are physically developed like they're adult women,
11, 12
younger
years
adult women. Yeah, it's insane. So just what do they have to look forward to? What do they have to combat all the negative energy that's going to come their way, all the negative press, all the things that are untrue or inaccurate at the very worst? They haven't been given the knowledge, they don't have the tools, and they certainly will have the mental capacity to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't right.
Mhm.
This needs to change. So when they're caught up in the sea of propaganda, confusion, and intentionally being misled, um, it's I do shake my head.
But that's what cancel culture need to be canceling this nutrition stuff. You got parents and families that, like you said, eating just about anything, all this
Yeah.
all processed food and things that are making these kids grow up, and all these diseases that they wouldn't have until later in life, they're getting at these younger ages. Those are the kind of things that cancel culture needs to be working on trying to cancel. But because we don't research, we don't learn about what we feed ourselves. We used to have home ec in school. Home ec was for the
Mhm.
girls and shop was for the boys. And every now and then some boys would end up in home ec for
Yep.
whatever reason, but still you learned about nutrition. You learned about
Mhm.
how to feed yourself, how to cook, how to prepare things, how to sew, and you have people now who don't know anything. They lose a button on a shirt, they throw the shirt in the garbage. It ain't good. It's no good anymore.
Yeah.
That's the mindset now. It's that everything is instant. If it's not working and working the way they think it should work, they want to cancel it. They don't want to do anything with it. And we have to start taking this cancel culture. It's not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse because there's no ground rules for cancel culture. There's no rules like, well, you only do this and you only do that. People can cancel anything they decide they want to cancel. You get enough people behind you wanting to attack something. And so that's why it's never going to go away. Because I read on the screen somebody said hopefully it eventually go away. It's not going to go away because it's becoming such a popular now. If something, like you said, something you don't like, get about it. Next thing you know, it becomes something that everybody's focused on, and now you want to eliminate it. And so cancel culture is never going to go away. It's only going to get worse. And we as Black people are going to be the ones who are going to suffer the most because they're
Absolutely.
always going to eliminate our things that are going to benefit us first.
Mhm.
We don't go out and cancel, the Ku Klux Klan. We ain't going out canceling, the Republican Party and the people who want to, eliminate voting. We're not canceling that stuff. We're canceling stuff like, because you said mothers, single mothers, women are going to stay single more than 48% and die alone. You cancel stuff like that. You want to attack a person for saying something like that, which actually is a statistic, versus attacking things and addressing things that really need to be addressed. So cancel culture is never going to go away. It's only going to get worse, and it's going to be crazy. Some of the things that are going to be canceled and attacked, it's just going to get crazier. You're going to be like, I can't believe it's going after that now.
Which reminds me, and I made reference to this before. Back in the days, my brothers, two brothers, they were in the Nation of Islam. And a couple of their buddies used to be, well, they used to be all over, Buffalo, Niagara Falls, Rochester, whatever. But they would be man in the corners on the streets, whatever. And it seemed like it was a certain level of safety, of comfort having them around. But people tried to cancel that out, whatever, too. Oh, there they go, whatever. Them with them hot ass suits on, selling them bean pies and all that. But they were security minded. Now, years later, we're looking for answers on how do we stop all this violence and these young folks going around just shooting up folks and all of that stuff. And which makes this stuff interesting, because one of the questions I had is, is cancel culture helpful or harmful? And in some cases it could be helpful when you want to get rid of that culture, in the sense of when you think of parents who know your child is out there doing dirt. They're out there doing dirt. They got guns. They don't work, but they got money and all that stuff. They coming in and out your house, whatever. They giving you a few dollars. You happy? Or I could get a car. I can go out. I could purchase this. And this may be the same person that ends up murdering someone, but people gravitate toward that instead of saying, listen, son, daughter, whatever, I don't know where you're going to do this at, but my house ain't the place. So you're going to have to find something somewhere else to do. But then we live people like, well, I'll never turn my back on my child. I'll never do this and that. But if your child is potentially trying to put you at risk and put other at risk, sometimes you may have to cancel their ass out or something till they get right. And that's on a smaller spectrum. But I think in cases like that, it would be helpful to cancel certain things out instead of glorifying, oh, look what my son just bought me. He bought me a brand new car. Well, you know how you got that car. It's not like he worked and bought it. That's not good. That's not teaching him anything to want the desire to stop, especially if his mother or his father approve of that behavior. So it's different levels to this as well.
I just want to address a comment that Vicky made. She said women don't want to be in the kitchen anymore. This is 2021. That's an interesting statement. It's an interesting statement, because with the overwhelming majority of children residing with the mother, who's going to cook? Are you going to order out? You're going to take them out?
They do.
That gets expensive, and then we wonder why the kids are overweight and malnourished. You call it what you want, but you have to understand that because women don't want to, quote unquote, be in the kitchen, your children suffer. So why don't we cancel going to McDonald's or Burger King and fast food? Why don't we reintroduce what Willie was talking about, home economics, being able to cook a decent, healthy meal for your child? Why don't we cancel the miseducation of your boys? Just as David said, why don't we cancel brothers getting caught up in the drug game? Why don't we cancel brothers going to jail for stupid stuff? Why don't we cancel out of wedlock births? Why don't we cancel the stupid stuff that our culture promotes? We don't want to do that. Oh, that's too good. That feels too good. We want to cancel the good stuff, but we want to dwell on the bad. Why don't we cancel ghetto culture? We don't want to do that, though. That's too hard. We want to cancel the easy stuff. And this is, and to what Christine said, Christine Brooks said, we're not using cancel culture strategically. If you strategically, it could be a very powerful tool. So why don't we do that? Why don't we, the pound cake talk? And if you haven't heard it, it was what Bill Cosby was saying. Why don't we do that? Why don't we employ more of that? Why don't we start pulling up our collective pants? Stop showing our collective underwear. Why don't we take these goddamn silly ass bonnets? Or why don't we cancel bonnet culture? Why don't we get kids? Why don't we get daughters back in the laps of the or between the legs of the mothers getting their scalp greased, so they don't have to wear this weed? So you don't have to stop giving your money to give a fuck about you. Why don't we cancel that?
We're about to get a cancellation on this
That's
show.
the shit I'm talking about. Why don't we deal with that?
And you're right. And that's what, that's what I said earlier. We're using cancel culture for all the wrong things. And it's only going to get worse because people don't want to attack the things, like you said, working with our kids who are out in these streets, parents knowing that their kids aren't doing right. Parents are at home and they're ordering out. They order out, every day, or they got the Hot Pockets in their freezer. Throw that in the microwave, and that's dinner for tonight. This is what they eat. And it's ridiculous that they can't prepare a meal. And then you say, okay, when you get married, which half of them not thinking about getting married because they got 2-3 kids or whatever, and they're content with being in a house where they got a man coming back and forth, but they don't want to be married because they're still thinking to themselves, well, one day I'm going to get somebody who's going to be better. Better than what? And what do you have to bring to the table to get someone better? A lot of them can't answer that question. They get mad when you ask the question. What do you have to bring to the table that's going to want somebody who's better to come into your life? And that goes for men and for women. But the thing is, it's cancel culture has canceled so much that our young people and our adults can't learn how to be a man. Like I said, eliminate home ec. Home ec was great. I learned how to cook from my grandmother, watching my grandmother and watching my mother cook, and so learned that. And then when I went away to college, I worked at when I went to UB, I worked in the food service. So I watched them cook stuff that I would eat when I would eat lunch or breakfast in the food service during my break. If it was something that was good, I would go back and watch how they made it so I could learn how to make it at home. But it all started from watching my grandmother, because I would have never known how to even start a meal if it wasn't from watching them. Nowadays, your grandmother too busy out trying to live her life. The age that you have now, your grandmothers are 40 years old. Remember,
man.
50, 60 years old.
30
Grandma's 30, 40 years old. She's still trying to get her groove on. So she ain't got time to stay home and try to cook and, teach you how to clean and this kind of thing. She trying to catch up on all the things she missed out on while raising you. And once she got you out the house, now she's trying to, catch up on what she missed out on. So it's really cancel. Like I said, cancel culture is not going anywhere, but we have to do things, and everybody waiting for a program, waiting the government to start a program. We have to start our own program. We have to start our own, have a cooking class online. You do everything else online. Do a cooking class, do a home ec class, how to sew a button on, how to cut hair, show how to cut your kids' hair, how to braid hair. I remember my sister. Well, I had hair back then. My sister used to sit and braid my hair on the front porch. Sit and braid your hair on the front porch. You sitting there hanging out, got your hair braided. You go hanging out with your friends, play basketball, football. Braiding was no specialty. Paying $300-$400. So you just go to somebody's house. They braid your hair. They cut your hair. Your boys cut your hair. Everything we had. We go get parts and build our own bikes in the backyard, and then go ride over the city. You know what I mean?
And if you think about that, if you think about like what you said, cooking and all of these different things, if you utilize the resource centers and stuff like that, and said today we're gonna have cooking classes and stuff like that, and as a parent, you send your daughters there, like, okay, today they learn how to make meatloaf or whatever the case is, whatever the meal is, signing you up for that, and you have people doing that, or like you said, that guys like, okay, we're going to talk about how to cut hair. We're going to talk about how you blend, do fades and stuff like that. You have that's an opportunity to get people to get off them games, and parents saying, because I remember when I was younger, it was like job training. So, like I think I had to go there Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily wanted to go, but my mother's like, you need to go. So they taught us how interviews, questions, how to do interviews and stuff. So I was a part of that. Me and a couple of my other friends. Shout out to Andre Dosen, Marcin Dosen. We had to go to those classes where everybody else might have been playing football or whatever the case is. We would have to leave those games, go to job training skills at the community center, and learn these different skills. This stuff could be brought back easily. All you need is space,
But you know,
and resources to do it.
They are going to tell you, but you know, I agree with what you're saying partially, but because of the way things are now, you can have a class, but you also have to stream it because people always got the excuse about not being able to get somewhere. So now if you stream it like a Zoom class where you can watch it online as well as come to the class and have it that way where it's both ways, now you have no excuse. Because there's always going to be that excuse, well, I can't get over there at that time, or I don't have no way to get there. I don't know anybody watch the kids. Okay, no, you sit the whole family down and y'all watch it online. You're learning these skills, you know. And I'm going to bring up something you brought up when you were just talking about that. Remember how many of you guys, I'm sure you remember Junior Achievement.
Yeah.
Remember Junior Achievement? Mm-hmm. Junior Achievement was where they brought you in and they showed you how to create businesses and skills on taking the skills that you had and using those skills to how to make money and create businesses. You don't even hear about Junior Achievement anymore because all those kind of things that helped us to get out of situations where was poverty, they no longer had them. Remember vocational schools?
Mm-hmm.
You had shop, you had McKinley High School that did carpentry. You had Seneca that did metal shop. You had Seneca that did electrical. You had Emerson that taught you the cooking. All these schools where you could go and learn these skills and then come right out of high school and go get a job.
Well, that was designed.
Right. So they eliminated all these things.
Yeah. That was canceled because it would remove young blacks. And I know whites took it too, but let's focus because we're a black panel. Remove them from the ability because most of us work well with our hands. Mm-hmm. I'm not one of them, but a lot of us are. And then they start saying, well, we're gonna like in bigger cities and all that stuff, we're not gonna have this in every school. We're gonna have it in certain schools, and they have to take tests to do it. They have to get in. So that's gonna weed them out and cancel them out. But if you had them in every school, and you talk about how do we reduce crime? These kids out of control. If they were going and they had vocational stuff, and they knew at the end when I graduate from here, I can make 50, 60, 70,000. And then if I started a family, all that crime stuff would probably be eliminated.
Because we didn't have all that crime when we had those vocational schools. Because those guys, even though they was if you think about it, even in the vocational schools, they had wood shop for the people who couldn't function in the other shops, you know what I mean? They had the wood shop, and they were called the Woodies. But even the Woodies was getting jobs, you know what I mean? They come out of there and go work for somebody doing construction, working handyman with their uncles, all those kind of things. They still had a skill. And that's, like I said, my program from Boys and Men, which is what I do, that's where a lot of my ideas came from, was growing up, you know. So we do hygiene, we do nutrition, but we do entrepreneurship, vocational stuff, introducing them to vocational skills. Nowadays, like you said, they make them take a test. We lose, our boys normally fall by 3rd and 4th grade. They fall behind in reading and writing levels so badly. So by the time they get out of high school, they can't go take a pre-test to go in to learn how to do sheet metal and carpentry and electrical and all these things that you used to walk right into in a vocational setting. They made it so hard for us to get any of that stuff. And they make it where you have to have a certain reading level, certain writing level, certain comprehension level in order to be able to provide for your family. So what do they turn to? They turn to the streets, and they turn to drugs, they turn to crime, all those things, because again, what they're looking for is a way to provide. That's what they're looking for, is a way to provide for their families. It's not they want to go out and sell drugs. but they see that as the only means that they can go out and do because nobody's giving them an alternative source.
Now, what Vicky said, these kids don't want to do hard labor. Now what y'all got? That's because that option has been canceled, so they don't know what hard labor, labor is. They don't know what it is.
Exactly.
If they don't have that opportunity. But most kids, if you gave them that opportunity, I guarantee you, those are the classes they would never miss. They would work. They'll learn to work and collaborate with others. They'll have better critical thinking skills and just getting along with people because they would have a project to work together. But they said, let's make a push toward career and college ready because they knew that not all, but most kids like, I can start it off, but they damn sure may not finish because writing papers and all that stuff was not necessarily our thing.
Christine asked, why are they falling behind? Black boys have the education of the Negro child, particularly the black boy, was never important. We were always viewed as manual labor. So our education wasn't important. Larry Elder, if you don't know who he is, go pick up the book and or better yet, just go to YouTube, type in there and listen to the story that he tells about his father and his father not being able to read and his mother putting him out of the house as a teenager. See, we don't talk about these type of things because we don't want the women to look bad. Society has always viewed women through the prism of Victorian lenses as they can do no wrong. The primary caregiver for boys are their mothers because most of them reside there. So for better or worse, however it's going to make you feel, the reason why these boys are falling behind is because they're not being assisted. By the time they get that assistance,
go ahead.
By the time they get that assistance, it's too late. They're already on the fast track to being dropouts. And this is what David was talking about when they don't want to sell drugs, but that's the only avenue that's left for them.
I want to touch on this subject too, because again, like I said, I talk about my program. Y'all probably say he talk about the program, but this is what my programs do.
Talk it, man. Talk
this
it up.
This is what my programs do. Jawanza Kunjufu. If whoever doesn't know who he is, go look him up. Go watch his videos. And what he talks about at the 3rd and 4th grade level, boys are more active. That's why you always hear the teacher saying, go sit down. Because we as boys, we are what is called right brain learners. Right brain learners means the teachers don't teach the way we teach. We learn. They want to teach us the way that they teach. So what happens as a right brain learner, we learn by visual, we learn by hearing, and we learn by touching, working with our hands. So if we hear a song or we hear something and it's something that's interesting to us, we can learn it because it's something that gets our attention. So we can learn a rap song just by hearing it a couple times. We know all the words. But you give us that same rap song on a sheet of paper, and because we're not structured that way, as we're not left brain learners, we find it difficult to sit, and our boys have a difficult time of sitting and reading. So that's why you find girls are good at reading, and they keep journals and all those kind of things, because girls are left brain learners. Boys are right brain learners. So as they get older and you get into more classrooms where they're getting more ditto papers, more workbooks, more textbooks, the boys fall behind because they're already reading at a slower level because they're more visual. So if they watch a movie, they can remember that movie. I do that in my program where we play music. And we use music to calm them down when they first walk in the room. We play an instrumental rap song, a song that they know without the words. And they'll be running around acting a fool in the hallways, whatever. And when they come in, they're all wired up. But once they hear that music, they sit down and they calm down. I don't have to say a word. And then what we do is we do visual things with them. So we do activities where they're getting up and they're talking. So we're saying, like, instead of having them write things, we have them say, all right, so tell us how your weekend was. And they get up and each one stand up and they tell about how their weekend and thing. So what was important about it? What did you like about it? What you didn't like, and having them talk about it. So we're teaching them public speaking, but we're also teaching them how to become more self-aware and talk about their feelings and different things like that. And they're not being taught these things in the school. And then when you show these young men how their specialized skill, that's what vocational is. Vocation is a specialized skill that you have that you can utilize to make a living in life. That's what vocation is. And a lot of times people think it's electrical, plumbing, and all kind of things. But you have kids who are instrumental. They play music. They can play the piano. They can sing. They can dance. That's their specialized skill. Showing them how to, and that's what we do. We show them how to use those skills to create businesses, how to make money. And so now, once they start getting that interest, then we say to them, okay, now you may end up having to get so good at this, you're going to need to use contracts. And when you get that contract, you know what that contract says. So what are you telling them? They need to know how to read. So now they have a reason to want to learn how to read. Not what if you say, well, you need to know how to read, then of course they get reluctant. But when you say this is why you need to know, or you need to know what that contract says. If somebody said they're going to give you 10% of whatever amount of money, you need to know what 10% of that amount is, which is what you're saying. You need to know math. So now they start to realize why they need to know the information they need to know. And then from there, they're able to go in and become successful because now they have an interest in reading. They have an interest in writing. They have an interest in learning math. They have an interest in all these things. And there's no interest when a teacher is just giving you a ditto sheet or giving you a book and say, read this and do this. And their comprehension is not at that level because they haven't been helped to that point to bring up them to that level where they're able to do that. So that's why we created journals in our program. So we give the boys journals just like the girls, because boys have been given a journal. They're given dump trucks and shovels, and that's what they do. You give them a journal and you tell them to write down, and then what this does is it allows them to practice their writing skills, while at the same time writing down their thoughts. So, I mean, there's so many things that can be done, and people say, well, why are they behind? They're behind because they're not being taught the way that they learn. That was my main reason for seeing this. They're not being taught the way that they learn. The teachers come in and a lot of teachers say, well, either they learn this way or they don't learn. They got ADHD. They always give them some label because they're not learning the way that they're teaching them. But instead of trying to find out how that child learns best and using that to help that child to learn, that's not happening. And it's not happening in a lot of places. And our young men are the ones, especially our young men, are the ones that fall behind because by third and fourth grade, they're already designing the prisons to get them into them. They build prisons based on third and fourth grade reading and learning levels. And it's all based on it. Watch Jawaza Kunjufu and read his information. He talks about why our young men are the way they are and how to work with them. And I study a lot of his stuff and I use it in my programs. And my programs get rave reviews from teachers, superintendents, people from all over the country because of what we're doing with young men who they said were unhelpable. They ADHD, they can't learn, they don't listen. And we got kids that walk in that room and come out and doing their schoolwork and want to learn. And now they have a reason to want to learn because I'm showing them how to start a business. I'm showing them how to start a business using skills that they have. And then they go back into the classroom and they're asking questions. The teachers look at them like they're crazy because, wait a minute, what you asking questions about education? And it's crazy because they don't take the time to understand the kids. A lot of them don't take the time to understand. They act out one time and they don't want to be bothered anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's that relationship building, that connection. I want to read Christine's comment. It was Christine kind of lengthy, but she said, when my son was in middle school, he was failing almost all his classes. When I investigated, I found out that the kids were not allowed to take the school books home with them. I went to the school and met with all the teachers and read them for trash. When I left the school, I had books for all his classes. He brought all his grades up, but what about all the kids who did not have parents to advocate for them?
That's right.
Can you imagine how many of them failed or fell behind?
Mm-hmm.
That's true. And it's a lot of parents that don't advocate, or they wait to the end of the year
When they're not
and they
graduating.
say, "Oh, is my kid passing or whatever?" I'm like, "Wait,
Too
this
late.
is the first I
Too
heard
late.
from you. Whatever. Where have you
Too
been?"
late.
You can go online and look. Well, I never knew the password, or I don't know how to get into the portal. Well, your kid knows how to get into it if you tell them, like, listen, pull up your grades. So excuses are being made, and the only thing they want to do is look at the end result. Did my kid pass? But it's work to be done throughout that time. 4 quarters of work that you have to follow up on and you have to be a part of. So, man, we in quite a dilemma, man. We in quite a dilemma.
There's a quote that I don't know which president of Harvard, but he said this, and I got this off a Neil deGrasse Tyson video. He said, if you think education is expensive, then you should try the cost of ignorance. And that is what we are awash in. Like I said, we're trying to cancel a lot of things, but the things that we need to cancel, we don't want to. We think some of the stuff is being cute. It's cool. You know,
if you look at the price of education compared to how much it costs to keep a person in prison,
right? It's cheaper.
You think some of your highest priced colleges is nothing compared to what it costs to keep a person in prison.
I think it's like $240,000 a year to house one inmate.
One prisoner, exactly.
With that type of money, you can send about 4 kids to school. Yes. So, like I said, we're canceling a lot of things, but we're not canceling the right things.
Thank you.
Well, one of the things is a lot of stuff that we're canceling has no bearing on us on a day-to-day basis. So you see some people all up in people who that's not even on our level, but we're expending time trying on social media talking about it and just sick about it. Even with the whole back when Donald Trump was president, I'm like, why do y'all keep talking about this dude every day? Like every day. And it would be people knowing, like, listen, you got other stuff to worry about, but they couldn't keep him out of his mouth. Or when you think about when a black person takes this stance, or he all of a sudden he becomes an Uncle Tom, or he's a coon, or whatever the case is. And I'm like, listen, y'all picked the wrong battles. Y'all picked the wrong battles to call certain people coons, and you got shit that you got to handle in your household. And that's always been my focus, even with this. Like, we don't make better communities, we don't make better schools unless we attack the issues in our households. When you have dysfunctional households, you're gonna have, and you have several dysfunctional, all it takes is 4 or 5 dysfunctional households in a neighborhood, then that neighborhood is shot. It's done.
Yeah.
It's done. And you think about that you have 4 or 5 in each neighborhood in a community, your community is screwed. Then you filter out in the schools, then you're like, well, this school used to be a 5 or a 4, now it's like a 2 because of the dysfunctions in the households. Stuff not rocket scientists. We cancel out the wrong things, and we need to pick and choose our battles more carefully.
Yeah, agree there.
All right.
Agree there.
Well, I want to kind of ready to close it out at with this question. At what point do you think cancel culture goes too far? And please give an example. When is it going too far?
When people misunderstand what an individual that makes a statement is attempting to do. Let's take the pound cake speech that Bill Cosby made. It's a long the same vein of what Denzel Washington said, when we control our own destinies, if we get together, marry, produce kids, make sure these kids go to school and they become educated, we cut down on a lot of the things that plague our homes, neighborhoods, and communities. Some people will call that, well, that's what white people do. Maybe that's why white people have a lot of wealth. Maybe that's why white people have a lot of economic success. Sometimes doing what white people do works. But we don't want to hear that, because that's called being a coon, called being a sellout.
But they also use that as a way as a cop out. They use that as a cop out. Well, that's what white people do, so we're not going to do that. We're not white. Just like in schools, used to call the kid, he's trying to be white because he's trying to learn, because he's trying to read, because he's doing good in class, or he's trying to be white, and that became the deterrent. If you don't want to be white, or you ain't, you don't want to learn. You don't want to do all the things that white people do. You don't want to be educated. So they start to use they use those terms and call those names, those labels, as a deterrent for people to do things that are going to help them, that's going to benefit them. And all the black things, we quick to call somebody ghetto, but they call them ghetto for what? For all the things that they do that are negative.
Right.
You never say, well, if you read that book and doing good in class, that's real ghetto. You know what I mean? You don't hear that. Or you're being white when you want to read and get an education. So they use that as a deterrent. And I've never understood that. I remember growing up and people used to say to me, because I wore glasses and I was, I used to go and shoot pool in the pool hall hustling. But I used to put the stick on the table and line up the balls. And they used to say, oh, you think you're a professor? You think you white? Because I would line the balls up and move around the table like I was measuring and all this. But I did it as a joke because they used to piss them off. And they would call me a professor and say I was trying to be white. But I was walking out with my lunch money and my school money the next day. But that was the thing. And it used to be a big joke to me because they thought it was deterring me. But I watched how they use it in today's society. And I watched how they use it in my school. They would call you white, or you're trying to be white, or this, that, and the other, only when you were doing something that was going to help you to be better.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the deterrent. You're trying to be better, or you think you're better than us, or you're trying to be white. And they still do it today. And
that phrase, Willie, you said is deep. The phrase of you think you're better than us. And I remember being in my master's program, and I remember sharing with one of my professors that I heard that a lot because I used to like to read, and I used to try to use different vocabulary. And you hear like, why are you using those big words and all that stuff? And they would say, you think you're better than us. And my professor said, you know what, David? Essentially, you are. And he was, and then I kind of looked at him like, why you say that? He said, if you coming from the same circumstances, the same social and economic status, and you decided to do whatever you can to get a competitive edge or whatever the case is, but y'all plan on the equal playing field, essentially you are better than them because you tried harder and all that. But people don't like that statement. You think you better than whatever, because we're not all equal. Some of us put in more effort, and that's what makes you better than the next person because of the effort you might put into something, especially when we're coming from the same financial, socioeconomic status. So people don't like that phrase at all.
And growing up, when I was a younger, like 9-10 years old, I used to go to this church called First Timothy. And I remember the pastor said to the whole congregation one day, he said, you're going to hear people when you do things and you're doing better and trying to make things better for yourself. You're going to hear people say to you, you think you better than us, or you think you better than this, or you think you something else. And he said, and in reality, when you actually think about it, you haven't said a thing. It's what they think. They think you better than them. They think you better, because of whatever it is you're doing. He says, so when you doing something and people tell you that you think you better than them, or you think you better because you're doing something, that means you're doing something that's good, and continue to do that, because now you're separating yourself from people who aren't doing better. And so that's how I looked at a lot of things that I started to do as I got older, because I used to feel reluctant and didn't try as hard because I didn't want to be considered being better than my friends. But when I look back at them, I never went to summer school a day in my life. And a lot of my friends went to summer school, and I used to always take pride in that. And people say, well, wait a minute. Now, I'm going to give you this part right here. How have you been suspended over 26 times throughout your school life, and you've never been to summer school? I was suspended over 26 times between 9th grade and 12th grade. But I've never been to summer school. And people say, well, why do you say that? I said, because I even though I was suspended at home, we couldn't go outside and play. My mother had the Britannica encyclopedias at home. So only thing I could watch TV, all I could do was lay on the floor and read those encyclopedias all day. And that's how I learned when I was being suspended. I would go home and read and do this stuff and, all this stuff. So when I went back to school, I was smarter. I was smarter than I was when I left out of there. And so, for me, I never went to summer school one day in my life. And people was like, how are you being suspended all these times and never have to go to summer school? And then they would say, you think you're better. No, I don't think I'm better, because my pastor said, you think I'm better. So I would just ignore that. And a lot of our kids take everything that their friends say and they run with it. They live on their peers. Whatever their peers say, that's what they go with. So they want to fit in, so they start falling behind their classes. They stop listening to their parents because their parents say, their peers say, I don't listen to my mother. We going here, we're going to do this, we're going to do whatever it is. And because they want to stay and fit in, they do the things that they know they shouldn't be doing. And so we have to work with our kids, man, and really encourage them to not look at that as face value of, their peers know what's right.
And essentially, at a younger age, you don't know that, but your peers are going to be your competition when you get older. They're going to be the ones you're going to be competing for jobs for. As guys, you may be competing for that woman, like, trying to jockey to be with a certain individual. So it's you always got to kind of stay competitive, not to try to kind of cut somebody's throat to try to get ahead, but just doing what you need to do and doing it the right way along with everybody else, and hopefully you end up on top, because eventually that's what you want to do, end up on top, no matter what. And if you end up on top, then hopefully you'll be able to help others that's beneath you to build them up. That's what it's all about.
If you fall behind, and that's the thing, we have to let them see that, you can't help yourself or anybody else if you're so far behind in your education that you need help yourself.
Yeah.
And then the big problem is a lot of them are afraid to ask for help because they don't want to look stupid. They don't want to look, They don't want people making fun of them. So then they're afraid to ask for help. So then they act out in class so that way they can get thrown out of class, and then they don't have to do the work.
It's amazing how stigmas work in certain ways to what we have a lot of our people that would rather be stigmatized for being stupid as opposed to being stigmatized for being smart.
Being smart. Yeah.
So, man, this was deep. This was deep. I don't want to prolong it, and that this subject
I love Monday nights. Y'all make me look forward to Monday nights. I tell you,
it's not going anywhere. If anything, like Willie admitted, like I admitted, never looked at cancel culture, didn't know what it was, what that phrase meant. It never was something that resonated with me, but now I know. So this is not just about going back and forth and all that stuff. And, you know, we as guys, we just chilling. We just having a conversation. And, you know, we do sometimes want some smoke, but it's about learning too. Learning different things. And some things you might like, I never thought about that. That's why other people giving their perspectives is always valued, because it may be something that they lived and went through that you had no clue. But now you're aware of that, and it helps you learn and grow. And that's the mindset that we got to get out of, it, thinking that, okay, my family way or my neighborhood way, that's the only way. It's other ways to do it. And we have to be willing to say to ourselves, I want to know many different ways to get to the top. And maybe I can combine this way, that way, my way, and integrate all them together to find success. Because sometimes that's what you need to do. Because if your way isn't working, then the hell you gonna do? So you have to find other solutions, whatever. So that's my closing comment for the show. Basically, what I just said right there. Herb, Willie, who wants to go
I'll
next?
go next, and then Herb will close us out. I just want to say again, just like Dave said, I had no clue what cancel culture was, and I actually had to go and read and learn what it was. And for my closing, I just want to say to people that, you know, if we're not going to get rid of cancel culture, but we need to learn how to use it to our best interest, how to use it to make it benefit us instead of eliminating the things that's going to help us. Stop attacking, you know, our history, and stop attacking things that is going to help us to become a stronger group of people, and start using that cancel culture to cancel things like gun violence and teen pregnancy, all the things that is bringing down our people. Use that cancel culture to attack those things. The same way you've got people jumping on the bandwagon to attack the things that we're attacking right now, you can get people, somebody's going to join you to attack some of those things that's going to help us to become a better group of people as a nation as well. So let's change our focus on cancel culture.
All right.
Mr. Herb.
Y'all want to cancel something? Cancel wretched behavior. Cancel doing academically poor. Cancel not investing. Cancel not teaching your boys how to be men. Cancel wearing weed. Cancel giving your money away for frivolous shit.
Woo-wee.
Being productive. And as always, growth and understanding occurs in the gray area. Godspeed. See you next time.
All right, folks, we out of here on that. Whatever. Cancel that weave. That ain't done with. It ain't over with yet. But we out right now. We about to run and hide after that one. All right, thanks, fellas, for joining.
Have a great night,
See you
fellas.
next time.
All right.
Peace.